to the Laughing Horror Podcast.
Good day and welcome back to the Laughing Horror Podcast. I'm your host as always, Kyle Laugh, and on today's show we've got last week's news, this week's releases, and a review is for the movie Split. For those of you who don't know, I typically work the night shift, so it is currently 7:45 a.m. while recording this, and I am drinking a beer. And I am doing that to honor my good buddies at the Buzzkill Podcast, as well as the Beyond the Veil Horror Podcast, since, those guys are always having a drink, and I'm not, so cheers to you guys. No, I haven't done this in a few weeks, but a bit of a random banter for you today. The Nintendo Switch comes out on Friday. I, of course, put my pre-order money down for it, paid it off a little bit week by week, and it is officially paid off. So this Friday, I can go pick it up, bring it home, and play some Zelda. So funny story for you guys, I was talking to one of my coworkers, and he asked me, you even look up that game, see if there's anything new? So I figured, it's a Zelda game. What do I have to look up? It's the same as always, right? Of course, I do look it up. The damn thing's a survival RPG game, apparently. So if you go off into the mountains and there's snow on the ground, if you're not adequately dressed, you freeze to death. Also, instead of getting your straight heart containers, you apparently have to choose between extra life and stamina. Because if you don't have enough stamina and you're climbing a mountain, you could fall off and die. And the best part about it is apparently you can go after Ganon as soon as you start the game. It's not advised apparently because you need your experience and your weapons and all that stuff. And speaking of weapons, apparently they get destroyed. So you have to keep being on the search and the lookout for new weapons, new shields, new swords, all sorts of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to this game. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Frustrating, but a lot of fun. So enough about Zelda. Let's get on to the news. So horror is alive and well and doing great at the box office this week. Get Out has officially dethroned Lego Batman movie, and as of today, the film has brought in just over $33 million domestically. It was retaining an incredible score on Rotten Tomatoes, which was 100%, which was until earlier this morning, thanks to some guy who I'm sure he's just being an ass clown. It's now sitting at 99%. Split is also making some money, currently totaling $130.8 million, while A Cure for Wellness, which has great reviews thus far, is still making a few dollars, but is officially considered a flop, only being able to bring in $7.4 million so far. My opinion on this is that Split and Get Out both had amazing marketing campaigns. Everyone and their dog were aware of both films, whether or not they were fans of the genre, while as with A Cure for Wellness, I personally didn't see anything major in regards to it. Even being directly centered in the genre, I still had to physically seek out information on the film, the trailers, basically anything to do with it. Another difference I find is in the budgets. While Get Out had a $4.5 million budget and Split with a $9 million budget, A Cure for Wellness had a budget of $40 million. So when a studio is usually putting that kind of money behind a film, you would think that they would want to give it the right amount of attention, which comes with proper marketing campaigns and things of that nature. But I digress. Here's hoping that the rest of the year of box office horror is as successful as Split and Get Out, and I personally believe it will do good this year. I've said it a while back on the show that horror is on the rise, and people are starting to see it all around now. So we'll see how the year turns out. So I was able to have a bit of fun on Horror Amino this past week and post about the real-life Annabelle doll having to be moved from the Warrens' home museum to another museum due to the zoning laws where they live. Basically, the movement of the doll was going to be taking place on a live Facebook stream, and the post started a fair-sized discussion on Horror Amino as well as on our show's Facebook page. If you do want to see the video, I did share it to the Facebook page, so you should definitely follow that page and take a look at the video. It's under Laughing Horror Podcast. Just a heads up, it is literally a doll being moved from one box to another with a few prayers and holy water being said or sprayed in the mix. But regardless, it was still a fun watch. The Bye Bye Man gets a home release date, which is set for April 25th. It will also be on iTunes prior to this on April 11th. It is an early release considering the movie was just in theaters, but hey, whatever it takes to make money, right? Vestron Video Collection has released the specifications for the Wishmaster Collection. All 4 films will have audio commentaries as well as the trailers, while the original gets several featurettes, including interviews and much more. So the release date is set for March 28th and will be $49.99 on Blu-ray. Although no real information has been released, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is getting a free DLC entitled Not a Hero, which includes a return of fan favorite Chris Redfield, and it will be made available this spring. According to director Jackson Stewart, who announced the news on Screen Addicts podcast, Beyond the Gates is getting a sequel. Here's what he had to say. I am writing a sequel to Beyond the Gates, which will definitely take some cues from A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. It's a little bit of a different story and kind of changes up some things. It's definitely bigger scale and a little bit more in the vein of the 80s paranoia horror movies like The Stuff and Society, and even the 70s Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It would be focusing on John from the previous movie. He has a new girlfriend in the mix, probably going to be played by Alex Esso or Jocelyn Donahue, something cool like that. I personally really enjoyed the original film thanks to the old school feel that it gave, so this is something that I am looking forward to checking out once it gets made. So in unfortunate news, the Hellboy sequel is officially dead. Guillermo del Toro made the announcement on Twitter, and I quote, Hellboy 3, sorry to report, spoke with all parties, must report that 100% the sequel will not happen, and this is to be the final thing about it. So as you've likely heard if you listen to my buddies over at the Buzzkill podcast or my buddies over at the Beyond the Veil Horror podcast in a discussion that we all had together on Twitter, we basically came to the conclusion that money is likely the factor that killed the movie, and there's not really anything they can do about it at this point in time. So bringing back our conversation about Annabelle from earlier, Annabelle 2 was brought back from the MPAA with an R rating for horror, violence, and terror. The synopsis of the film is as follows. Several years after the tragic death of their little girl, a dollmaker and his wife welcome a nun and several girls from a shuttered orphanage into their home, soon becoming the target of the dollmaker's possessed creation, Annabelle. The film is currently set for a theatrical release of August 11th of this year. So we do have some sad news to report, as you likely already know. First off, Chris Wiggins has passed away on February 19th at the age of 87 after a struggle with Alzheimer's disease. The man is known in the horror genre for his portrayal of Jack Marshak in 65 episodes of the Friday the 13th series, but one thing I bet you're not aware of is that you've actually encountered a lot of his work throughout the course of your life. I was very surprised when I found this out myself. So just as an example, the man did a lot of voice work. So for starters, in 1966, he did the voice of Thor, Hawkeye, and Kraven in the Mighty Thor cartoon, the Marvel Superheroes cartoon, as well as the Captain America cartoon. From 67 to 70, he voiced Mysterio in the Spider-Man cartoon. In 85, he had various voices in Star Wars Droids. From 87 on, he did the voice of No Heart for Care Bears in, I believe, movies and the TV series. In 1991, he did additional voices in the show Rupert, if you've heard of that. I remember that show when I was younger. In 1995, Never Ending Story, the series, as well as Sailor Moon. On Sailor Moon, he was the narrator. And from 1989 to 2011, which is his biggest contribution to the voice acting, he played Cornelius on Babar, or voiced Cornelius, I should say. So definitely his work affected a lot of people, and he will be missed for sure. And in another heart-wrenching loss this week was that of Bill Paxton, who sadly passed away from a stroke he suffered during heart surgery. Although he was a huge presence in Hollywood, the man had a massively impressive history within the horror and sci-fi genres, including this specific list here: Mortuary, The Terminator, Aliens, Near Dark, Brain Dead, Predator 2, Twister, Nightcrawler, and Titanic, just to name a few. So shortly after his death, representatives from CBS came out to say that the entire first season of Training Day, which was one of the last acting jobs Paxton was actually involved with, had previously been completed and will air all the episodes of the show. So if you do want to see him, you can definitely watch the show and see him on there. This is another huge loss to television and movies, and he will, without a doubt, be missed by basically everybody. So now to lighten up the mood, we will take a look at some casting news. So first off, for Godzilla King of Monsters, we've got Kyle Chandler from Netflix's Bloodline, Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things, and Vera Farmiga from Bates Motel, as well as the Conjuring series, who will be playing a family together, so a mother, father, and son. Currently in final negotiations for the Predator movie, we've got Yvonne Strahovski, who played Hannah McKay in Dexter. And according to Dread Central, in The Predator, Strahovski will play the mother to Tremblay, a troubled boy who is accidentally drawn into the conflict with the fierce alien creatures by her ex-husband. We also have Alfie Allen, who plays Theron Greyjoy in HBO's Game of Thrones, and Allen will play an ex-Marine who teams up with several outsiders to stop the human-hunting creatures. And you can expect Predators to be in theaters on February 9th of next year. Well, that's all that we've got for the news, so we'll go ahead and jump into the releases for you guys. So first off this week, we have the Spanish film We Are the Flesh, which comes out today on DVD. It's written and directed by Emiliano Roca Minter and stars Noe Hernandez, Maria Evoli, and Diego Gamaliel. Face to face with a culture in which cruelty and lust are linked in a shocking way, this debut provides an intense allegorical vision of an apocalyptic Mexico, one we do not, however, get to see. In a derelict building, a brother and sister become fascinated by an older man. Next up, we have Lavender, which comes out on video on demand as well as in a limited theatrical release on March 3rd, which is this Friday. It is directed and co-written by Ed Gasdonnelly and co-written by Colin Frizzle. And it stars Abby Cornish, Diego Klatenhoff, and Justin Long. The movie revolves around Jane, a photographer who is forced to come to terms with her mysterious and tragic past after a horrendous car accident robs her of her memory. Along with her husband and daughter, Jane returns to her childhood home and reconnects with her estranged uncle. To take control of her life, Jane must confront a mysterious lurking force and grapple with a past that continues to haunt her. Also this Friday, we have Don't Kill It, which gets a video on demand as well as a limited theatrical release. This one's directed by Mike Mendez and co-written by Robert Olson and Dan Burke, and stars Dolph Lundgren, Miles Doliak, Christina Klebb, and Courtney Gaines. An ancient evil is unleashed in a small Alaskan town, leaving a trail of death and destruction as it passes from host to host. The only hope of survival lies with a grizzled demon hunter who has faced this terror before. Together with a reluctant FBI agent, he has to figure out how to destroy a demon with the ability to possess its killer. And last in releases this week, we have The Institute, which also gets a March 3rd release for video on demand and in limited theatrical release. This one's co-directed by James Franco and Pamela Romanowski and co-written by Adam and Matt Rager. The film stars James Franco, Pamela Anderson, Topher Grace, Laurie Singer, Tim Blake Nelson, and Josh Duhamel. The film is set in 19th century Baltimore. The feature is based on true events and centers on a young woman who, due to grief following the untimely death of her parents, voluntarily checks herself into a mental institute. While there, she is subjected to bizarre, pseudoscientific experiments in personality modification, brainwashing, and mind control. So now we're going to get into the review for this episode, which once again is Split, which is written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. It stars James McAvoy, Anya Taylor-Joy, Betty Buckley, Jessica Sula, and Haley Lou Richardson. While the mental divisions of those with dissociative identity disorder have long fascinated and eluded science, it is believed that some can also manifest unique physical attributes for each personality, a cognitive and physiological prism within a single being. Though Kevin has evidenced 23 personalities to his trusted psychiatrist, Dr. Fletcher, there remains one still submerged who is yet to materialize and dominate all the others. Compelled to abduct 3 teenage girls led by the willful, observant Casey, Kevin reaches a war for survival among all those contained within him, as well as everyone around him, as the walls between his compartments shatter apart. Of course, this is still a new film, and as I did with XX last week, I'll be limiting myself to some of the information provided in order to give you all a chance to see it, and not get pissed off at me for accidentally ruining the whole movie for you guys. So, now, I'm personally not a big fan of M. Night Shyamalan, and I don't mean that in a way stating that I hate him or his work, because that's not the case at all. For years, he's been getting the short end of the stick from people who make fun of him and his movies. Do I really blame them? Not totally. Shyamalan has had a few stinkers in the past when it comes to his signature twist endings, but you can always, and I mean always, expect great cinematography. Well, if not, perfectly chosen cast, excellent character development, and for the most part, a top-notch storyline, which most times, often than not, have failed at the hands of that aforementioned twist. So, Split was able to offer me something new, however. For one, an incredible newfound level of respect for James McAvoy, who seamlessly was able to jump from one personality to another, which was fun and amazing in its own right, and aided in helping the storyline progress to the next level and to keep me entertained and wanting to learn more about his character. The film takes no time to get into the meat of the story, and from there it starts to slowly unfold the mystery that is Kevin, his several personalities, and what he's planning on doing to the girls whom he has abducted. And don't get angry about the slight spoiler. If it's in the trailer, to me it's fair game, so don't say anything about that. And speaking of the girls, props to Anya Taylor-Joy, who did a great job in her role. Her method of acting in this was completely different from what I'm used to, as she's not really playing the typical female victim role, but instead of using alternative acting abilities to basically express everything that she needs to in order to not only tell her personal story, but what she's feeling and what her thoughts were at almost each and every moment throughout the film that she was in. Personally, I don't like going into films of this nature with high expectations, as anything can go wrong at any moment. Split is the type of film that all the pieces have to connect in order to work, so if you leave something out or forget to piece the smallest thing together in the script, it ends up leaving a massive plot hole which can essentially ruin the film. Luckily, everything that I've seen is done perfectly and leaves me here without any complaints about the film, so I would suggest that you catch it in theaters while you still can, and if you haven't already done so, just do it. Otherwise, you're waiting for its home release. So 9 out of 10 for Split for me. And that's all that we've got for you today for the show. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook page. Just search up Laughing Horror Podcast. And one thing I am looking for currently, though, is if you guys have the time or the ability to, is if you can throw us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher. All you got to do is just type in LHP in the podcast search, and we're basically the only ones that pop up there. So click on that, leave a review, a rating, whatever you can. It'd be really appreciated. Also, if you want to get in contact with me at the show, you can do so by sending us an email at laughinghorrorpodcast.com. We do accept audio clips in order to play them on the air if you would like. Other than that, you can follow me on Twitter, laughing_horror, as well as Horror Amino. The username is the same as Twitter, laughing_horror. Other than that, that's all I've got for today, guys. So hopefully you have a good week, and we'll catch you next time.